At SOM, every first-year student goes on an international experience, and we went on it this year during our spring vacation, so in March. And the international experience is it's a structured trip with 20 or 30 of your classmates, and structured in the sense that it's focused on a particular sector. So it might be focused on finance, it might be focused on healthcare, it might be focused on green technology, and you go with a professor and a couple of TAs to a country of your choice and a focus of your choice, and you have meetings with government officials, leaders of private companies, and to try to get a sense of where that country is in that particular sector.
We met with the Ministry of Finance in Russia, the Ministry of Trade in Norway, and we also met with some large oil companies and resource companies in those countries to try to compare what it was like to do business there and to try to understand why does it succeed in one place and it doesn't seem to succeed as well in another place. We went to the Coca-Cola bottling plant outside of Moscow and met with one of the biggest businessmen in Russia, and just the people that we have access to all around the world during these trips, some of them through SOM alumni and some of them just through reaching out. It was really phenomenal.
Typically we would start off with very early in the morning, you got to be on time because you have a packed day ahead of you. So we would typically have 3 to 4 meetings a day. And each of those meetings, prior to the meetings, we actually had a book on China that our TAs put together for us. So we actually studied the various aspects of China, whether it's real estate or private equity or investment banking. And we actually had prepared questions. So we knew we were responsible for asking a particular question at this meeting. We met with the governor of Hong Kong, the vice mayor of Shanghai. So we were meeting with very high-level people. We're having really engaging conversations on events that were happening, literally at that moment.
Professor Garten, who is our trip leader, really focused on integrating our pre-trip preparation with macroeconomics. So we were taking macroeconomics for the couple months leading up to our departure for the trip. So as we were thinking about sort of some of these global financial forces and some of the trends, especially with the recent recession, we put a Chinese lens on it. And so we started thinking about, okay, what is it about China's relationship to US how is China's economy influencing US economy and vice versa? What's happening in the Chinese economy, and given understanding of what we were learning in macroeconomics, what might be on the horizon for China? What might they be worried about as they move forward? And so our prep was really integrated in that particular class. And I think that was a rich way to sort of enter into China with a base level of knowledge that allowed us to engage at a high level.
Japan's always been somewhere I've wanted to go. The Chizuki fish market, it's like one of the top tourist destinations in Tokyo, but fascinating to see from a business perspective as well. And basically every morning, or I think all but maybe one morning a week, the huge ships that have been out to sea fishing for tuna like all night and have sort of flash frozen the fish on board all come back to Tokyo, and the tuna are all auctioned off to the various wholesalers who then sell them to restaurants, and it ends up, part of your sushi lunch. And the auction and the market itself is this kind of fascinating microcosm of business, everything from sort of auction theory at work to free market supply and demand. You're setting the prices for the fish that day based on how many people want it, based on the perceived quality. It's all of these things at work, but somehow in kind of a very primitive, gritty setting.
The main purpose of the trip is for the students to get an understanding of a business environment that's different from their own. Right? So the trips that I lead are almost always to developing countries because I'm a development economist. We were able to take advantage of both Yale College alumni as well as SOM alums in Bangladesh. So for example, a Yale College alum is the chief of staff for Sir Fazle Abed, who's the head of the largest NGO probably in the world called BRAG, Bangladesh Rural Advancement Committee. And so for example, she was able to get us a meeting with Sir Fazle Abed, and it's very difficult to get on a schedule, so that was very valuable. And we also had a recent SOM alum who works at Citi Bangladesh, the Bangladesh offices of Citibank. And so she not only got us a meeting with Citibank, but she also arranged for a television interview for a couple of our students. It was good to get that exposure as well. And then we had organized a dinner where we invited the Yale alums to come. Right? So it was good for the students to be able to interact with the alums in a less formal setting.
The thing that I learned or liked or appreciated most about the international experience when we went to Chile was how interconnected the entire world was. Now, I've lived in 3 different countries, but most of my time has been spent in North America. We were, part of a country that occupies the coast in Latin America, but the energy companies that had a strong presence there were American. And some of the considerations some of the things, the trade-offs that the companies were talking about in terms of investing and whether it's the right place to be, they had global repercussions. And it's just good to be on the ground and to actually see that in place and talk to the key decision makers in place. Because any company or any bank that I work for will no longer be limited to this North American context. We're too interconnected for that. So it was a good lesson to learn as to how interconnected we were.
They were very impressive. And the people we spoke to, who were many of them very accomplished business people, were much impressed, from David Neeleman, who founded JetBlue and now Azul, through the people who devised the Real plan for Brazil 15 years ago, and people who are producing spectacular returns on their investments in the Brazilian economy. The students were able to challenge, probe, and interact with these people on a very impressive level. I mean, I was and remain impressed, and that impression continued over the last 7 weeks as I worked with the same students, or a much larger group of students, on the State and Society course.
We were really lucky, I feel like, to have each other. I mean, we had a great group. In a lot of ways, I feel like our group was very, very representative of our class, which was great. But, when you travel, there's always this uncertainty of, are you going to get along? They're really long days. You're meeting from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and it's day after day. You're going from different cities, different countries for that matter. And with my group, I was really impressed. Everyone had a great attitude. And even more so, I was just so impressed by the astuteness of my classmates in the meetings, asking really great questions, us building off of one another on those questions. So, collectively, we really got a great educational experience out of it. And it was an experience of a lifetime, for sure. And the people on that trip made it that way.